Welcome to Rev Up Your Business with Hilda Gann. We are now in season 5, and we've changed the name and the focus of the podcast. Rev Up Your Business is the podcast for small to medium-sized business owners, entrepreneurs, and HR professionals. Each week, we share tips, strategies, and trends on how you can build success in your business. I share my expertise as a people-centric leader in work culture and human resources. My guests share their expertise in human resources, marketing, sales, finance, IT, leadership, and the multiple facets that you need to take care of your business. If you love to learn and want to find out how you can rev up your business, join us. Welcome to another episode of Rev Up Your Business. Today, my guest is Kate Wade. If you want to learn more about resumes, cover letters, interviews, both on the end of I need to develop one and I need to find the hidden gems in this resume, then you're going to want to listen to this episode. Kate Wade is the founder of Get Her Hired. She's a certified executive coach and a professional resume writer who develops scroll-stopping resumes. Having sat at the table where C-level decisions are made, Kate knows firsthand what it takes to prepare, network, and apply, interview, and attain top levels of leadership in the world's largest enterprises. She uses her Fortune 200 experience to help executive women get into positions of greater influence and achieve the prestige they have earned impressively. Get Her Hired is one of only 2 CV resume writing experts to partner with Forbes. Amazing. And we're going to talk more about that. So today we're going to tap into Kate's expertise, tips, strategies, and trends on resume writing, both from those job seeking and those that are looking for those star performers. Welcome, Kate.
Oh, thank you, Hilda. Thanks for that generous and thoughtful introduction. I appreciate that so much. And I'm so excited to get to share what I'm seeing happening out here with resumes and with hiring and trends, et cetera. Thanks for having me.
Well, I've been watching you on LinkedIn and just growing in terms of the amount of information that you share, the tips and strategies. And I know you because we've known each other for several years, and to see how quickly you are growing this Get Her Hired and really helping people uncover their, yes, I've been an executive for 5 years, hire me kind of mentality. Like you pull that wow factor out of people. So
yeah.
You use the word scroll stopping, and tell us what that means.
Well, thank you. Yeah, what I like to do when I'm working with an executive client, typically people I work with have 10, 15, 20 years experience. Some of them have been consistent in an organization over a longer period of time. And so they haven't actually been required to update their career marketing materials in years and years. And if that's you, you're not alone. So it's very, very common that we get into a job we love and we're dedicated to it. And so we don't look at that career material for a while until that moment we need to. And what a scroll stopping resume is one that in the first half of the first page, before someone needs to scroll to see anything else, the person reading that resume or CV knows they want to bring that person in for an interview.
So it's that impression, that first like 3
right
seconds.
At the top.
Because the average is when you get a resume, you've got 30 seconds to impress me because that's all I'm going to take. You know, sometimes I see that first page and it goes over there.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly it. And so how do you really stand out and convey your impact and your accomplishments in that first half of the first page so that everything below there just validates and backs up what we said at the top? And it's a no-brainer to bring this person in for an interview. So what that really looks like in a resume, and while I work mostly with executives at that director level and above, this applies to everyone. If you really want a standout resume, talk about your impact, not your responsibilities. And this is really how it's a competitive market. And if your resume or your CV looks like a job description, it can look like many, many other people's job descriptions
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So you're in a category of many. If you want to be in a category of one with your materials, you want to talk about the impact and the results that you've created. That puts you in a category of one because no one else has achieved the results you've achieved in your career.
Yeah. It's about those accomplishments. Yeah. When I help people with resumes, I'll say, this looks like a job description. If you want to, at the top, describe it in one sentence what you did. Overall accountability for all aspects of business op. But then the body is, I increased revenue by this. I
Yes.
developed this project ABC and it resulted in XYZ, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right, Hilda. Yeah. And no one can compete with that because no one has the same results.
What I find interesting is when you start to, as you say, you don't necessarily upgrade your resume when you're first, when you're in it. And then when you stop and you have to apply for thinking, wow, and then you start doing factors. For example, when we had my husband and I had our company, we were doing leases and I wanted to give people the idea of the business operation side. So I said, I created and negotiated 26 leases, to, as part of our expansion. I mean, that was impressive. I had to count them on one finger, well, several fingers,
Right.
but that's the example, right? I remember a LinkedIn post that you had where you basically tweaked out that woman's accomplishments. Do you want to share that as an example of what you
Oh,
mean?
yeah. Yeah. So, a lot of the time, when we ourselves are asked to talk about our accomplishments, many people, and this is completely normal, we get a fear factor comes in because we don't want to let other people think we're bragging or that we are over embellishing upon our accomplishments. And so what I like to do is when I'm working with a client, and you can do this yourself, is tell me about the data, tell me about the results, right? And so someone might say, well, they initially might say to me something like, was responsible for a global team to execute a new go-to-market strategy on a new continent where we were opening up a new product line. So that might be what someone tells me, right? But what we can then go into is like, okay, how many people were on your team? Across how many states or continents or provinces? What is the size of the market opportunity in this new area? And what is the forecast that you might have had for this new product line that you're implementing? And so, right there, we have taken a sentence that tells us about what someone conceptually, theoretically was responsible for. And we've turned it into 3 different data points that then we can actually show impact, convey the scale and the scope of the work so that when someone reads it, they're like, oh, I get that. That's a $5 billion opportunity. And they forecast that in year 1, they're going to be able to make 500 million on it. So that tells us something about the capability of the person far beyond just the statement that they were on a go-to-market project.
As you're sharing that, the original concept is, wow, this is big. Now it's much more specific and it's even bigger than I thought because there's numbers like 500 million revenue or something like that.
Yeah.
And so data points really does impress and shows your uniqueness, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. They do. And sometimes it's hard. Just yesterday, I gave a client her resume back, and she said, "Is this me? This person's really impressive." I said, "Well." I don't make up facts. I do not make up data. And you told me these facts. And she said, yeah. And I said, so these are just the facts that's all it is. She's like, wow, I've, I've never thought of myself that way. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure she just felt that much more. Um, she felt proud of who she was. You probably say, "Hey, I hired this person," right?
Exactly. Exactly.
What you've
Yeah.
used the word bragging several times, and I'm
Mm,
a hashtag I am remarkable
yeah.
facilitator. It's a
Yeah.
Google initiative now switched over, but it started off as a Google initiative for helping women and other underrepresented communities like become more confident in who they are. And
Yeah.
one of the unforgettable slides is a Black woman standing very proudly and says, "It's not bragging if it's fact." And that's what you're doing, is you're helping people state
Yeah.
facts. And women don't seem to feel as comfortable stating facts because they're just not used to it in their own daily way of communicating. So you bring
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
those scroll stopping resumes and helping people facilitate that. And as you say, if you just started to write your data points and make it a little bit more proud, because
Mhm. Mhm.
it's fact and people will see it much clearer.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
I know people talk about size, right? You got to keep it short, but if you just graduated, it's pretty hard to fill up 2 pages. And if you've had a 20 plus career and you've moved to various places, it's hard to keep it to two. What is your tips and strategies on size?
Yeah. Well, for newly graduated people, it's quite simple. You absolutely can have a one-page CV, and you want to start it where instead of starting with experience, you're going to start with your education and talk about the education at the top. And then below there, any maybe volunteer experience or job experience you have had, maybe at a part-time job. Maybe you worked at your university in the library or doing some research support. So that's going to come below your education. And it's just fine to keep it to one page. That is completely understandable for someone new in the market. For someone who's been out there, oh, sorry, Hilda.
I have a
Yeah.
question on that before we switch over
Yeah.
to people who are not new from school. Do you highlight key subjects that you took that might make a difference to the jobs that you're applying for? What's your
Oh,
thoughts on that?
absolutely. Yeah, if it's relevant, right? So if I'm going into the field of, let's say, an IT job, and I want to be a software developer, you're definitely going to have links and information maybe to your GitHub account. When a GitHub is where people can feature the different software code they've written and different software projects they've had. Um, but if you like took like a ceramics class, you may not put that on there. It may not be relevant unless it
Mhm.
is relevant in that you want someone to ask you about it. So you only put things on there that you want people to ask you about and interview you about. And this is for everyone. If you had job responsibilities you didn't care for and don't want to do again, don't put them on your resume because
I
people
never thought of that.
yeah. So, like, for example, one of my first jobs, I had to make coffee. I had to do the mail sorting for this person. I never want to do that again. I'm not putting that on my resume
Got you,
because I
got you,
don't want
got you.
to, put myself in that position again. Yeah.
Okay, so that's a tip for young people, because I think I often get that kind of, well, what do I put on there? Okay, so
Yeah.
let's go on to the person who's got job experience. What
Yeah.
what do you suggest in terms of the size of?
Yeah.
And I think it's not the size, but give us some tips and strategies on.
Yeah.
on their
So
resume.
for all your business owners out there, a lot of the time as business owners, we get asked to serve on boards. We get asked to contribute maybe in private equity, or venture capitalists want us to come in and help consult, right? So there's different ways as business owners or as experienced executives that we do need to have a cohesive document that shares some information about our career,
Hmm.
right? To validate us for a board position or whatever it might be. And so my key advice here is 2 pages. And again, that first half
Tight.
of the first page, it's going to be very succinct. And people question me this quite frequently, especially my clients who are in a technology role and who have a lot of different softwares, hardwares, skills that they have, different programs they're able to run, and abilities and tools. And they're like, wow, we got to have everything on there. The thing is, no, as an executive or as a business owner, you don't need to show everyone everything you've done. What you get to do is have a very succinct, tight deliverable about what you've created and what the outcome, what the impact has been. And so, really, for that higher level person or the business owner, you just want to talk about the scale and scope of your results. I mean, you have your experience, you go through your titles, you go through your dates, you go through your impact, but it's not going to be everything. Those older roles, or maybe an older like Hilda, I know in your business you've done multiple things. And so the things that are older than 10 years, maybe they only get, you know, 3 bullets underneath that thing. Or maybe you consolidate all of the things you did that are older than 10 years. And so
Yeah,
you
like
can
I'll have a
absolutely,
one-liner that says educator, manager, director in healthcare, right? Like
yes,
that's it. That's all. They kind of can visualize what that is, but it's not relevant 10 years later, like, after 10 years. It's more
right.
being able to showcase those more recent things. Because
Mhm,
frankly,
mhm.
anything 10 years ago seems so ancient.
It
And the
really
world has
does.
evolved in so much time that you need to
Yeah,
showcase the relevant things that are today.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And if I could, I
Yeah.
want to explain a little bit about how I see that top half of the first page working.
Please, please.
So, yeah, what I'm typically doing is there's the person's name, then there's kind of that working title underneath it. So, if you're a business owner, you might put the name of your business and then CEO or founder or whatever you might have. If you're an executive, you might put chief revenue officer, chief human resources officer, right? Below there is a very brief 3 sentence about section that talks about the scale and scope of your work. This is where you can have those responsible for type statements.
Hmm.
Okay. And then below that, you're going to have a section that has 3 to 5 key results that you've created across your entire career. The things that really stand out. These are the things that when you're in an interview, you would want the person to ask you about these things,
Right, right.
right?
Okay.
Below that are 2 more sections. So if you can picture the top half of the first page, you've got your name, title, brief about, 3 to 5 bullets that are on your key accomplishments across your entire career.
Hmm.
And then the next 2 little sections, one is on functional skills, and the second section is on interpersonal skills.
I
And
like how you
these are
segregate that. Yep.
Yeah, because if you look at any job descriptions today, if you're, I'm on a couple of different nonprofit boards, and when we're looking for candidates, there's certain things we want to see in a candidate, even for a board position at a nonprofit. And so there are going to be hard skills, functional skills like strategic planning, like financial acumen. These functional skills are things that you've learned and are really, really good at.
Hmm.
So, for example, people put on their change management, or they might put in their, um, go to market strategy. They might put in their organizational development, or they might put industrial psychology, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Below there in the interpersonal skills, these are the soft skills. I
I
like
like
to
to
call
call them non-technical because soft
Yes.
makes it sound like it's mushy and it almost it lowers the value of it.
Yeah,
So
yes.
in this age of trying to be neutral and
Yeah.
if not positive neutral, I like technical and non-technical. That means those
Mhm.
skills that you need equally important to
Oh,
function, but they're
yeah.
not technical functional
Yeah.
aspects. And
Yeah.
before you go back, do you suggest one after the other or side by side? You've
Oh.
mentioned one after the other, and I'm just wondering if side by side is visually impactful or like layered.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. Um, I write the resumes that are going to get an interview. And so usually, people have to go through an application system in order to secure the interview. So, most for my clients, what I'm doing is just regular, straight down the page. When we have lots of tables, when we have too many kind of formatting uniquenesses, when we get kind of into a formatting place, these applicant tracking systems, the robots, they're dumb. The robots just can't, they don't get it. Okay. So we have to make it easy for the robot to read it. And that's why I just simply go through it very straightforward. I agree. It's more visually appealing to see things tabled. And that type of resume, you can use that once you have the interview
Okay,
and
gotcha.
you can hand
Thank
it
you.
out around the table, right? Yes, absolutely use that visually appealing one. But the job of the
That's a
resume,
very good tip because
yeah,
so often people do use the robot
visual.
to really kind of weed out people. But I disagree. I think, the human touch, even if it's only for 30 seconds, you should really give that person that time rather than allow this machine to find the keywords that match.
Yeah, it's a numbers game. It's a numbers game. And to be competitive, I really advise all my clients to just assume a robot is going to read this at some point. But once you're in there and having the conversation, you can have that visually pleasing document.
Um, we've talked about resumes now, and I think a good lead complement to that really is LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Obviously, people who are interested in you will probably go into LinkedIn to check out in more depth what is
Yeah.
behind that resume that I just saw. So, tips and strategies on that, Kate.
Yeah. Oh, I have many, many. When I when I work with a client, I go through 24 different points on their profile, and I provide an 18-page audit of their LinkedIn to help them not only with, because there's three critical areas on LinkedIn, depending on what your goal is. So as a business owner, these are helpful as well. But I do have some additional tips for business owners. Uh, but here are the things that matter the most. There are 10 areas that we need to have complete on our profile. And it's everything from having an actual image, even if it's a default image, as the banner behind your profile photo, to the profile photo itself. If you don't have an about section, you actually are diminished in the algorithm. So, absolutely have an about section. If you're not using all 50 skills, you're under optimizing how you're going to show up in the results. So if a recruiter is looking for someone with your skills, if someone out there wants to bring in some business owners to help consult on a project, and they want you to join their group to help do that, they're not going to find you if we don't have certain areas completed. The second place I look is optimization. So now, if we have those areas completed that are essential, how are we using them? So, for example, Hilda, I haven't looked at your LinkedIn in a minute. However, if this is just a tiny example, and I would love people to check for this. If you have skills, because you can have 50 of them, I recommend using all 50. If you have a skill out there that says PowerPoint, Microsoft Office, if you are not an administrative assistant or a very junior person that needs to have those types of computer skills, they're wasting space that you could use for more critical leadership skills. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I mean by under optimized, right?
Okay.
We want your profile to pop to the top. Now, this is something I recently learned that I am fascinated by, and I want everyone to go check this, even the business owners, junior people, senior people. Frequently, and as business owners, we do this. We give people a title that's kind of an internal title that we know what it means because it's related to a particular service line or a particular customer base, or maybe a region that's important for us as a business owner. And what happens though for the person on their resume is that these titles don't always mean things in the outside world. So, for example, I worked for a company that would call um, a person a general manager of a region.
Hmm.
Now, this general manager was an internal title, but when you looked competitively at the marketplace, this person was a vice president.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
As an external, if you look at the responsibilities, the scope and scale of, they were a vice president to a senior vice president. Yet internally, they were titled general managers, which, not to throw shade anywhere, but general managers can be, many, and it can apply in many areas that don't have the scale of responsibility that those people had.
Right. Right.
Right. And so what I learned recently is that there are about 6,400 market value titles that are out in LinkedIn. And so for every job title you've had in your past, and Hilda, go through and check your own. I recently did mine. What I did was, okay, I just took a minute and I wrote down, okay, what was my wacky little internal title at that company? Okay, it was, blah, blah, blah. Very specific internal
Yes.
title.
Yeah. Yeah. I was a
Then,
special projects coordinator. Like,
okay,
and
perfect,
yet I
right?
was responsible for IT implementation software for 1,000 people. Like,
Yes.
right?
This is perfect, Hilda. This is great. Thank you for sharing that example, or if that was an example for you.
Yeah, I
So,
was.
oh, okay. So this is perfect. So they internally titled you that, but to the outside world, you were probably an implementation manager,
Okay. Yep.
something like that. Okay. And so what I would do is go into your LinkedIn, click on the little pencil by your experience section. Then for the job you had, click by the pencil there because we're going to edit the title.
Hmm.
Now, I don't have a photographic memory, so that's why I had to write down the internal title, separately. Because what I want to do then is use that internal title as the first line in my experience section, so that if someone calls HR and says, "Was this
Yeah. Yeah.
person the
Because
implementation
I'm
manager?"
worried about the authenticity, right? Because then you look like you're
Well,
lying.
but it's not. Let's remember,
Yep.
yeah, that we're not bragging here. We're just stating fact. And so the fact is that your internal title was something else. It was special projects
Coordinator.
associate or
Yep.
coordinator, right?
Hmm.
So your first line in your experience then, in the narrative area, says internal title, special projects administrator.
Hmm.
Now, the real title that people will search for, you're going to put in a few different words and you're going to see the drop down. And you want to select the title that's appropriate from the drop down, because those are pre-filled market value titles that recruiters and other people will find you for.
So would you put that in the second line then, or in the first line, and then put the internal title with a bracket internal title?
Yeah, nope, you don't
Trying
put
to,
your internal title at all. All you're going to do is so in the drop down for your title on LinkedIn, you simply use an appropriate title that matches your responsibilities. It's a fact. These matched your responsibilities and the scale of the work you were responsible for.
So from a person saying, "I'm sorry, you called it this, but we called your company and that wasn't your title." How do we get around that?
Yeah. Then the first line in the narrative area where you can
Okay.
explain about your experience, that's where you
Yeah.
put the internal title.
Okay, gotcha. I just wanted to make that clear. Okay.
Yeah, your main title, make it a market value title, because you're going to be so much more visible in search results
Yeah.
than if you
I
have,
mean, this is the dilemma, right? And so thank you again for another wow tip that's going to help people that are searching and trying to figure, well, what does that really mean, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So we're not lying. We're putting the internal title
In the body.
in there.
Gotcha.
But you're going to have a market value title that is equivalent but more recognizable to the outside world.
I mean, this is all these things that you're sharing is really great. I'm sure I wish that I had my pen and paper that I could write as vigorously. So I thought, must go back later and jot down notes for self to apply and help my clients. And my son is just graduated and I'm helping with his resume. Now I can help him even at a higher level than I could yesterday.
Absolutely. Yes.
Two of the things we talked about before we started the recording was you wanted to talk about career gaps, and then you also wanted to talk about ageism. So let's cover those two topics before we need to say thank you very much for everything you shared.
Yeah. So with career gaps, there's a lot of people out there who need to take time to care for elderly family members or to care for young children. All sorts of other reasons in between. And so when people have career gaps, I have found that they feel very bad about themselves. It's like it's a moral failing or something. You're a bad person because you took 3 years off to care for an aging parent. No, you're you are actually a very, very good person for doing that. But there can be some damage, some perceived damage to our career, not actual damage, but perceived damage to our careers.
And you mean perceived from the individual or from the person who is potentially hiring?
Both.
Okay.
Both. Right. So
right, exactly.
I was, speaking with a gentleman. He's like, well, I took 2 years off because, I have a child with special needs and my wife had taken time off and I took time off as well, consecutively. And he felt very, almost ashamed. No, no, no. This is a wonderful thing. And then from a hiring perspective too, I think people can be confused. Well, this person had a gap. Are they actually going to be capable? Absolutely, they're going to be capable. Absolutely. And so if you're someone who is experiencing a gap in your career and you don't know how to handle it, so let's talk about it first from the individual person side. Yeah. What you want to do, there is a bias in LinkedIn against not having a current employment on your resume. So there's basically an unemployment bias on LinkedIn. So what you want to do if you're currently in a gap, maybe you've been laid off. Maybe you've been in a situation where you've taken that time off, that sabbatical. What you want to do is, close out the position that you were in and start a new position. And your new position is going to be your name, okay, is the name of the company. And then the title is going to be the title of the job you're looking for. And then underneath there, within the explanation narrative section, you're going to say, I'm currently taking a career break to do XYZ. You don't have to reveal too much information. You can just say taking a career break and looking for a future role in these areas. And you can basically use that as a placeholder in your LinkedIn so you don't get dinged by the algorithm. on your resume, what I've done for my clients who've had these career breaks, I just worked with a woman who had an 11-year career break, and she was so worried she's not going to get a job. This person has a law degree. This person has an MBA, and she took 11 years off to raise her children. Of course, she's very highly capable, but she's also worried, is someone going to hire me? And so all we do is we acknowledge the career break on the resume. We don't have to go into a lot of explanation because there's no proving that you need to do. You just explain it. It's a fact. And then you go on with the rest of your experience behind it. So those are the ways that we handle that. Now, from the person selecting for a new candidate who might have had a career break, I think that there can be bias against
Yes.
people with these career breaks.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate because it's human nature to say, oh, well, their shelf life isn't very good, or they don't know the
Or they
latest
won't be dedicated
technology.
to the job because obviously, if you take 11 years off, you're obviously not career minded enough or something. Yeah, yes. There's all these assumptions in your mind, your unconscious bias of why that career gap happens, but not seeing the potential of this person, as you say, using that example, an MBA, a lawyer. I mean, just to get through those programs shows that the person is capable, is driven. You don't coast through law school. You don't coast through an MBA. So you need to see the value of that person and look beyond that sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. So if they are meeting the skills and requirements of what you want to see, and they happen to have a gap, so what? They are probably equally qualified. They are equally qualified because if they're meeting the skills and responsibilities that you want to have in that job, why not bring them in for an interview? I mean, this is the thing. People who have those gaps frequently really are dedicated people. And this is an example. They were dedicated to their family. They're driven.
Yeah.
They were dedicated to taking care of a parent.
Yes.
And so absolutely, these are great people to have because they have high emotional intelligence. They have high empathy, and they are going to be great employees.
And I think we can add too, they made the conscious decision that they could not continue to perform at their high level and had to make a decision, and they chose the emotional intelligence, empathy part of being there for their family in this example that we're kind of talking about. One of the things I always think that recruiters need to gain experience on is to see beyond the resume, see that person and that potential. I still remember looking at this resume of somebody who was going to cover a mat leave. She was an admin assistant. She was going to cover the mat leave. And I looked at all her other experiences. She was the right-hand man to a person who was a retail operator. And he would open stores, and she would write, I would open 5 stores in each one 24-hour turnaround time and launch a department store. And I thought, wow, organizational abilities, everything was popping through my head. And I thought, when this maternity leave ends, she is going to move into the office manager role. I am going to groom her. So I encourage people to look beyond what this person has and look for the potential of this person contributing to an organization.
Absolutely. I love that, Hilda. Yes. Yeah. And that's the same with...
That's my little tip, strategy, trend for all of the recruiters out there. Please, when you read a resume, look for the potential of that person in your organization to grow and develop and contribute. The last thing we wanted to talk about is ageism.
Yes. Ageism is real. And female ageism is even more real. That's just, it's the truth. I'd like to say it's unconscious bias, but I think it's just straight up bias a lot of the time. And
meaning it's overt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It is. It really, really is. And so it's a fact. We get to accept that it's a fact that there is ageism out there.
Mhm.
What we can do if we're the job seeker, um, what is to our benefit, of course, is our network. So the new people coming in who are young don't have the network. So remember that if you are someone who's got 20 years experience, 30 years experience in your field, what your superpower is all the connections you've made in those 30 years to
Mhm.
vendors, to contractors, to consultants, to customers, right? Like think of that huge network you have. That's to your benefit. Now, as a job seeker, I was just doing this yesterday for a client whose first job was in 1988.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. How
Okay.
many years ago was that?
In 1988. Girlfriend, that number is not flipping going on the resume, nor is it going on your LinkedIn. It is irrelevant. Now, sometimes my clients will say, well, that's a blue chip company. I want to make sure that people know I worked at PepsiCo, or I want to make sure people know I was, employed by
Yep.
Goldman Sachs or whatever. Okay. Well, we can have that on the CV, but it's in a consolidated format without a date.
Exactly.
No date.
Yep.
No date.
Yep.
So the places where we can remove some of the dates and things like that are going to be right in the on LinkedIn. Don't have your date in your education. On LinkedIn, you can consolidate and remove older roles that don't matter. You don't have to have them out there. And on your resume itself, consolidate those older roles, excuse me, and don't have the dates there, and only report things back through 2013 if you want to, just depending on your experience. Things older than 2013, older than 10 years ago, consolidate.
Thank you. Thank you. We've covered a lot of ground today, and so many real tips and strategies to really help people who are hiring and want to hire the best, and people who are wanting to showcase their abilities. I think too often we don't brag enough and use the facts to shine. And I
Yes.
love what you do, Kate. And I so wanted to have you here to help people shine in their accomplishments for resumes, and for people who are hiring to look for things and understand what these people are capable of doing. So thank you for sharing so many tips and strategies and trends to help us show our best selves as we move forward, either in hiring or in looking for opportunities. How do
Thank
people
you.
get a hold of you, Kate?
Oh, thank you. The best way to find me is on LinkedIn. So you can find me at Kate at Get Her Hired on LinkedIn. My website is getherhired.com. And I just loved connecting to talk about this today. I could go on and on and on, Hilda, because I'm very passionate. I love to give everything away because if it helps one person, I've accomplished my mission for the day. I love it. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. So appreciated it, and as you say, giving away, because you have given people things they probably hadn't thought about. So I'm sure everybody got at least one, two, or even a bucket full of gems. So
Yes,
thank
thank
you
you.
again. And to those who are listening, like, give this a thumbs up or a two thumbs up, because I think Kate really gave us so many things that will be helpful to us as viewers and listeners today. And if you want to subscribe to Rev Up Your Business, because there are so many different aspects of businesses that can help business owners, executives, and HR professionals to help their organizations rev up. Thank you for tuning in to Rev Up Your Business with Hilda Gann. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast on YouTube and Spotify to stay up to date with all of our latest episodes. For more HR tips, strategies, and to learn how you can create a people-centric workplace, visit our website at peoplebrightconsulting.com.